talk about the inspection a little bit.
Absolutely.
So we've done a ton of deals together, and let's say a buyer finds a home, we agree on a contract, closing date, all these things. What happens at inspection? I mean, would you say more often than not, issues seem to come up?
Every home is going to have issues.
Right.
You know, so the last thing that we paint to any of our buyers is that there is a perfect house. You know, the house is going to be perfect for them, but there's always going to be something, right? Because you get a 1980s home, you're selling it in 2024, 2025. You've got tons of code that's been updated throughout the process. So
good point.
Your inspectors are looking at current day,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going basically retroactively back in time. So the property is, of course, going to have issues. Is it still functional? You know, are there any major mechanical issues or structural issues we have to address? Then that's definitely going to be something that stands out.
Interesting. And just to be crystal clear on this, when we talk about doing the upfront approval and waiving your financing contingency, that's strictly on the mortgage side. That has to do with the financing piece, but there is a contingency specific to an inspection, correct, which is separate from the financing to protect the buyer.
Oh, absolutely. So there's three different moving pieces primarily in the contract. So you have due diligence, which is your inspection period, right?
Okay.
So in that time period, we'll have all of our inspections completed, negotiate whatever we want to negotiate or whatever's necessary. And if the house just isn't a fit, we terminate. We just terminate, we walk away, no harm, no foul, and we go and identify the next property.
Right, you pivot to the next one. So let's dig in a little bit deeper on that inspection piece. So let's say we're under contract, the client's moving forward, something pops up on the inspection. What examples would you say are fairly common? And then what happens once those issues pop up?
So there's a lot of fairly common issues in Georgia. So a lack of ground fault interrupting circuits or GFI receptacles inside of bathrooms, things of that nature, water heaters without expansion tanks. So there's a lot of things that commonly pop up. So approaching those is really second nature now, right? So we already have the systems and procedures and processes and quotes, to be honest with you. You know, so once we get an inspection report back, like you said, we're very well connected. So we can include our GCs and everything, just ask them for ballpark quotes. And, you know, if we need to move it a little bit further down the line, then we'll get them on site, give them a hard, firm quote, and then make sure the buyer's comfortable and go from there.
Interesting. So when those issues arise through the home inspection, what is your process? You as a buyer's agent, as a realtor, you then what? Go back to the listing agent to what? Have them fix those repairs or give potential incentives or credits to the buyer?
Yeah, my preference, typically anyway, is to get credits to the buyer.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason for that is that with a seller, not to say every seller is going to take the cheapest way out, but what we do know is a seller is selling a property. They're divesting their interest of it and getting away from it. So what I don't want to do is to put the trust in someone that is not my client to appropriately address an issue, and they may take the cheapest way out. Or they may rush through the process and miss something that typically I would catch anyway.
Right. So there's basically a fail-safe process in place. So the buyer's best interest is taken into account, where when we talk about credits, there's an issue that pops up. And when we talk about credits, just to be clear, that's what? Those are basically closing costs or really cash that can go to offset the closing cost on the transaction.
Typically, we have also made it where the seller cut our contractors, our vendors a check at closing, just to take care of the problem right after closing. So it really just depends, but yeah, typically it is like a contribution toward closing cost.
Wonderful, yeah. So issue pops up, you're able to get your own vendors, a third party that's objective. They're able to do good quality work, and then you're negotiating with that listing agent to make sure that they're compensated either through the closing or outside the closing. That way, when the client does close on the home, whatever issues popped up or mitigated, they're done, and they're comfortable with that.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's done on a daily basis. So. There's really no reason for buyers to have any discomfort about taking the next steps. We have all the systems and procedures in place to make sure they're protected.
Right. No, and that's something that, over the years, I mean, I have colleagues in the mortgage space and in real estate. There are, honestly, just really bad stories of buyers that, purchased a home that had major issues or defects, post-closing, that weren't discovered, and, you know, either it was missed through the inspection or what? Would you say that there's a world where maybe, you know, less experienced realtors maybe missed something because they were more focused on getting the transaction closed, and they maybe didn't, you know, understand or do enough due diligence to maybe discover these specific issues?
Happens all the time, unfortunately. Yeah, yeah, and not to speak for every realtor, but a lot of realtors are trying to count a commission check.
Right.
You know, and what our goal is to make that client so impressed with the process to understand that they can fully trust what's going on and it's on their behalf, that eventually they would refer their grandmother to us. That's the biggest form of flattery.
Right. No, that's interesting. Yeah, your world is a little bit different than ours on the financing end. You know, from our point of view, you know, our goal is to make sure, again, that they're comfortable, you know, with the transaction, their monthly mortgage payment, you know, what's involved with owning a home as far as, you know, indirect cost over time as far as maintenance and utilities and things like that, and make sure that they're comfortable with that payment on the long term. But on your end, you know, that's a pretty big responsibility too. There's, you know, it seems like it's a lot more cumbersome and complicated when we're talking about all these systems in the homes and things like that, that there's quite a bit to go over to make sure that it's, you know, in a great position. That way they're not calling you, you know, 6 months later with something we missed.
Absolutely. And we'll have a very detailed conversation. You know, my skill set is a little bit different, just because I grew up in heating, air, electric, and plumbing, and I built houses. So I have a little bit of a different perspective looking at inspection reports to be able
Sure.
to brace people for time frames of expected failure, or, you know, what may come up from X and Y and Z. But overall, we do everything we can to make sure that we vet the property and make sure that our clients understand that if they continue forward, this is what you should expect, and make sure they're good with that too.
Right. So your mixed knowledge, in addition to being a great realtor, with that construction background, goes a long way because you know what to look for and you can identify potential issues. And, you know, we deal with it all the time. The inspection piece is very, very important. We've talked about these different milestones, appraisal and approval, but that inspection, I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road. And, you know, even on the front end, I'm sure that you're identifying properties that maybe are in the best condition possible, unless that client is maybe looking for more of a fixer-upper, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We're actually going to take a lot more time on the back end, you know, back a house to try to vet out properties to see why they would not fit as opposed to why they would. For particular clients. You know, if we have a conversation and the client says, I need something move-in ready, I do not have time for any projects, that is just not my goal, then that's going to be a lot of time in the background to make sure that as we walk through that door, we've done everything we could to make sure that property is in A1 shape and good to go.
Right. Yeah. So once you have that conversation, you understand, you know, what they're looking for, what they want to get into. There's different options that you can take them down from a property standpoint to really just present them properties that really just meet their specific needs.
Exactly. And that's a lot of the front end work, right? That's that conversation. That's why we need to have that conversation as early as possible in the process, so we know what to look for. You know, and like you touched on, some people are okay with a lot of projects. You know, they want the projects. They're okay with the built-in equity and putting in sweat equity and things of that nature, and that's fine too. We can find those. But, you know, the A1 buyers, the people that want move-in ready, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to identify those properties.
Right. Yeah. I feel like, you know, it's not discussed enough, but I mean, these are all really good conversations to be having, that, you know, it's getting pre-approved for the mortgage, getting approved, you know, identifying a realtor like yourself, but really, I mean, man, the property piece is so important. You know, it's a large investment, and if you get that wrong, it could be severe as far as future cost.
Extremely severe. Yes, yeah, and that's why that we urge everyone, because in the state of Georgia, you don't have to get an inspection.
Correct. You can waive it.
Right. I mean, you can just walk in, look around, and then walk right back out. And we take the scope of you're going to have to sign a release of liability, you know, from us, because we're encouraging you so strongly to get that third party to come in who is a professional. They've been to every educational avenue in order to understand the property inside and out and make sure that this is a safe purchase.
Right. No, and that's a very good point. And you know, just thinking about, you know, other scenarios we've run into over the years. I know here in Georgia, you know, a lot of properties deal with radon. You
Yes.
know, matter of fact, my personal home that I bought, had radon. I wasn't even aware of that being an issue, but it came out in home inspection. I was able to negotiate everything with the seller and get it mitigated. But that is a big deal here in Georgia that people, especially people that are relocating, need to be aware of. And, they have that inspection with so many points of inspection that really go down the list. And there's things that seem to pop up that you need to deal with and know that that property is the right fit for you. Or like you said, pivot to something else.
Absolutely. And to touch on radon, that is, and you and I have dealt with hundreds of relocation clients over the years, and having that conversation there, most everyone is in shock that that's even something, right? But it is a major thing here, so it's the second leading cause of lung cancer. I mean, it's a big deal.
No, it's a super big deal. No, it was frightening to discover that. And then, once I was educated on the mitigation process, what's involved to deal with it, I felt, comfortable, allowing myself to live there, my family. The mitigation process is pretty intuitive, and it's really interesting the way it's done. But again, that's just another example that, things do pop up during the inspection process. And depending on, what you're comfortable with and with the right advice, you can kind of go down the list and make sure you're comfortable with that purchase. And if not, again, pivot to something else, start again. But the important piece is assemble your team, have a good group of professionals, a great broker, a good lender, a great realtor, get all your ducks in a row, get approved, have these conversations to put yourself in the best possible position and be able to navigate this process.
Absolutely, yeah. Your team is going to lead to your success. And that is simply it. Now, you could piecemeal your team together and you could get piecemeal results, or come in and just get a cohesive unit that's done this hundreds of times, and then we'll make the process substantially easier for you.
No, I like that. Great feedback.